In front of you, we have the college football playoff bracket. Just want to have a little short discussion today after having a night of sleeping on it. We're not quite 24 time of recording this, at least. We're not quite 24 hours removed from the committee making their decision. So I want to talk about it, and I know we're going to get questions here in Twitch chat, so at least I'm expecting to. So let's kind of go through it. The top four became really easy when SMU lost to Clemson. Oregon was always going to be number one. Georgia, I don't like Georgia being at 2, but you can't put anybody else there. Had Texas won, Texas would have been the 3 or been the 2 seed. It's that simple. I don't like Georgia being a 2 seed. I don't like the thought of a 2-loss team being a 2 seed. But yeah, there's just no one else to put there. It was easy. Boise being the 3 seed, I really feel like it was really hard, and I said this Saturday night after the college football, or after the conference championship games were done. It was really hard to have true discernible argument between Boise State at the 3 and Arizona State at the 4 and flip-flopping them. It was really hard to have true argument to put one higher than the other. Other than the fact that one in Arizona State has a really bad loss to Cincinnati. You start getting into those arguments that I don't like of, was this a good loss? Who has a better loss than the other team? Because I think all losses should really be the same, unless you have a scenario like Ohio State losing 1 point at home to Oregon, or on the road to Oregon. That is obvious. That's a quality loss. I don't like quality losses, but you do have to factor them in. And Boise State has a better loss. Their loss coming to Oregon. Arizona State having 2, one of which comes to Cincinnati. A 5-7 Cincinnati team that, quite frankly, just is not very good. So they fall into the 4. They are deserving of a bye. Do not get that wrong. Because Clemson, who won the ACC, they're just not good. Clemson's not good. They're fucking terrible. The ACC is strictly and objectively worse than the Big 12. And you could see how the committee felt about the ACC and putting their 2 conference championship game participants at 11 and 12. SMU would have been higher. SMU could have made the argument for getting a bye over Arizona State. It would have been a very weak argument because, again, I think the ACC is much worse. Had they won their conference championship, but they didn't, so that made it really easy for the top 4. 5. Let's talk about 5, 6, and 8. 5, 6, 7, and 8 now. Because I think 10, 11, 12 were really easy. 10 at Indiana is a no-brainer. Indiana had the 103rd ranked strength of schedule, which is strength of schedule a very good metric? No. It's a metric that measures or changes from year to year. It varies from year to year because Indiana does not control who they play in conference. They only played one of the top other top top 5 teams or top 3 teams, top 10 teams, because Ohio State finished 6th. Teams in the Big Ten, which was a loss to Ohio State. Then the rest of it, Indiana only played 3 teams total with a record above 500. And Washington, the 3rd team, was exactly at 500, finished the season at 6-6. Michigan, they beat by 5, if I remember correctly. And Ohio State, they were never competitive outside of the first 2 drives. Indiana was never competitive with Ohio State, so them getting the 10 spot was a no-brainer. Getting the Tennessee at the 9, also kind of a no-brainer. The 9 through 12 are no-brainers. Also, kind of much like the 1 through 4. Tennessee has a really bad loss at home to Kentucky. They don't have the schedule that Ohio State has. I do not buy into that SEC powerhouse conference. The SEC wasn't very good. You look at Tennessee's ranked wins, and this is where you get into a really rough argument of how you want to measure ranked wins. I think here at the end of the season, you can measure ranked wins based on the entirety of the season. North Carolina State's that's not a ranked win. I'm sorry. North Carolina State finished 6-6. That's not a ranked win. Tennessee beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not a ranked win. Finished 6-6. Alabama, that's a ranked win. Okay. And then you lose to Georgia. And Tennessee fans have their opinions about that Georgia loss, saying it was rigged to help Georgia. Still lost. I'm sorry, they lost to Arkansas, not Kentucky, by the way. So you couple it where you only have 1 ranked win to Ohio State's 2. And Ohio State having 2 losses, one of which is a really good loss to Kentucky. You have to get into that argument of quality losses. Then a bad one to Michigan. Arkansas finishing 6-6, Michigan finishing 7-5. 2 equally bad losses. Tennessee is the 9. Like they're ranked lower. Like that was a no-brainer. SMU at 11 would have been higher and win your conference championship. Comes down to that. You play in the ACC. The ACC is not very good. It's that simple. Clemson 12. They won the ACC. They have to be in 9-3 with a blowout loss to Georgia. Absolute blowout loss to Georgia. And then in which they just did not look good whatsoever. And then a weird loss to Louisville, which I just can't explain because Louisville was not very good. I mean, they finished 8-4, but it just weren't great, which kind of describes this Clemson team of not great. They're probably going to get blown out by Texas. Then a loss to South Carolina, a good South Carolina team. But 12 is the only spot for them. Now, the 5, 6, 7, and 8 argument, which probably took the committee the most amount of time. I do not necessarily agree how they did this. The committee got this overall. The committee got everything right this year. Got most of it right this year. I shouldn't say everything. They did the right thing by making sure SMU was in. They did not punish SMU for playing in their conference championship, which I think ultimately needs to happen. Excuse me. And by leaving Alabama out, they put a premium on the fact that you can't lose 25% of your games. We'll talk about Alabama, Miami, and Ole Miss here in a minute. But committee overall, I think, did the right thing, especially with those bottom three teams in Indiana, SMU, Clemson. I don't know how I feel about 5 through 8 yet. Now, 5 through 8 is very easy, especially for Ohio State. You beat Michigan, you're in that 5 spot over Texas. And I've had some conversations and disagreements with SEC fans saying, oh, it's bias against the SEC. If the committee was biased against the SEC, Texas wouldn't be here at 5. Texas with arguably one ranked win. Again, I don't think you can count Michigan as a ranked win. Can't count Oklahoma. Did Texas A&M finish the season ranked at 8-4? No. So you could arguably say, if you base it off of end of season, Texas has no ranked wins. And then they lose to a backup quarterback. And just looked absolutely terrible. It's really hard for me to say Texas deserves to be in the 5. They need to. I think they should at least be 6, probably 7. But then how do you move things around after that? That's just really hard for me to say, to agree that Texas deserves to be the 5. I don't really like that spot, but is what it is. Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State, I think all three of them have good arguments for the 5. Notre Dame has a really bad loss. Notre Dame gets the 5 if they have a conference championship. If they played a game Saturday, Notre Dame gets the 5 and win. Notre Dame gets the 5. Simple as that. Join the fucking conference. I think Notre Dame only has to blame themselves for being a 7, and honestly, I think Notre Dame, I mean, yes, mathematically, the highest Notre Dame can ever get is a 5 seed. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think 7 is the highest Notre Dame will ever be able to get, because they don't play on conference championship weekend. So I think Ohio State definitely has I think all of them have an argument to be all of the top of, or 5 through 8 have an argument to be over Penn State. Again, for Ohio State, all of this comes really simple. To be over Notre Dame, Penn State, or Texas, fucking beat Michigan. That comes down to that right there. And then where I don't like, where the committee loses me, and I said it with SMU, I get, you're not punishing a team for playing in the college or in their conference championship. Ohio State went into Happy Valley and beat Penn State. Penn State didn't score an offensive touchdown. Ohio State should be ranked higher. You know where I'm going with it. Ohio State should be ranked higher than Penn State. Again, is that bias as an Ohio State fan? Sure. I'll admit it. Probably is. But when you look at who Penn State has played, and you look at who Ohio State's played, it's really hard. Really, really hard to sit and say Penn State should be over Ohio State, other than the fact that you don't want to punish a team for playing their conference championship. And if that's their soul, I would love to hear what the committee has to say on Ohio State versus Penn State. If that's their sole reasoning right there, is we don't want to punish a team for playing in their conference championship, fair enough. That's fine. I'll give you that. But I just don't think it's good. And it comes down to, like, strength of schedule. Like I said at the top, strength of schedule is not a good metric because it varies from year to year. It's an independent variable because the Big Ten sets the schedule for who each Big Ten team plays in conference play, at least. Ohio State had to play 3 top 5 teams at the time of playing them. Had to play Oregon, had to play Penn State, had to play Indiana, all within a little over a month, mind you. Originally, when the schedule was made, I'm sure the Big Ten was expecting Michigan to be a top 10 team, top 5, top 10 team, and not Indiana to be that top 5, top 10 team. Penn State has one ranked win. Has played had played 2 ranked teams in the regular season. And one of those ranked teams is Illinois, who I believe is, they're 20th, so they are a top 20 team now. At the time of playing Penn State, they were, I believe, 15th. 20th or 19th. I'm sorry. Penn State just, it's really hard for me to say Penn State deserves to have a higher seed than Ohio State. Unless you are only going off of can't punish the team that played in the championship game. If that's your only argument, then you're going to win that argument every time, because I do agree with that. I just don't agree with it in this setting. Texas, like I said, I think it's really hard for to make Texas as an argument over Penn State. I think it's hard to make Texas over an argument over Ohio State. Texas had one of the weaker schedules. Again, strength of schedule, independent variable. The only games you control is, well, in the SEC's case, your 4 out of conference games, you choose to play fucking FCS bumfuck. I don't know what FCS team Texas played this year. Oh, they didn't. They played Colorado State, UTSA, and Louisiana Monroe. And Michigan. So you had a better non-con than some teams, being carried by Michigan there. It's just Texas did their 2 biggest games, and I have a friend who's a Texas fan. I don't even know. Their two biggest games, and really the past, ever since the Oklahoma game, this team has not looked right. They struggled with a 5-5 or 6-6 Vanderbilt. Okay, they beat Florida big. Struggle with Arkansas. They beat Kentucky by 17 points. Okay, struggle with Texas A&M. Look terrible again against Georgia. This team, this offense especially, has not looked right since Quinn Ewers got hurt. I think if you're going to punish a team like they did with Florida State last year, and I get last year, different scenario because it was only a 14 playoff. If you're going to hurt a team based on the fact that their quarterback is injured, even though Quinn Ewers is playing most likely injured, or is at least, he may not, if he's not injured at this moment in time, is having a significant fall off. We're talking about a QBR of 59 right now. I'm looking at his stats. QBR of 59. He has total of 2,600 passing yards. 62% completion percentage right now. Or 62. I'm sorry, 66% completion percentage, 63 against the AP top 25. I'm sorry. Looking at that right there, I was looking at two different stats. 25 picks, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. If you there is a fall off since he got hurt. Beginning of the season when he was healthy, he looked like a Heisman contender, looked like the number one, what should have been the top, or at least first quarterback taken off the board. Hard to say whether or not he would have been number one because of Travis Hunter. If you're going to punish a team last year in a way of keeping them out entirely because of an injury, there needs to be some form of punishment for a team dealing with an injury now that you're going to keep in. And like I said, this Texas team hasn't really looked right outside of a game against a pretty bad Florida team since they played Oklahoma back in week 7, I believe it was 7, 8, somewhere in there. 7, I think. I was there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th game. Let's see, what week was that? Can I get a freaking date? October 12th, so week 6, I believe. Oh, that was week 7. Week 7. My days are all goofed up. Sorry about that. My weeks are all goofed up. Yeah, Texas hasn't looked right since then. I think everybody, at least up to Ohio State, I think you start to lose it at Tennessee. Above them, at least the next 3 teams above them have an argument to be above Texas. I think Ohio State has an argument to be above Notre Dame and Penn State as well. All gets solved by beating Michigan for Ohio State, obviously. And now let's talk about the first. Well, I have first 2 out here on the graphic. Let's talk about the first 3 in Alabama, Miami, Ole Miss. I said it. The committee got it right. It's the right thing to do. Alabama, at some point, and I've said it this whole past 25 minutes, strength of schedule is a mostly uncontrolled thing. For 8 of Alabama's games, because they only play 8 conference games, the SEC decides their schedule. Can you sit and make the argument, because I've seen the arguments, that, well, the SEC protected Texas by giving them an easy schedule. You got to deal with it. The Big Ten gave Oregon a fairly easy regular season schedule. They only had to play Ohio State and Michigan in terms of the premier Big Ten teams. Again, no one was expecting Illinois to be as good as they were, and then Oregon still dismantled Illinois. Most likely expecting Oregon to win one of those two games against Ohio State or Michigan. Probably the game against Ohio State you would expect, at least if you were at the Big Ten office, expect, well, it's at Autzen. Ohio State has to travel to Eugene. Oregon wins a close one, then they go to Michigan and lose a close one. Oregon won a close one, and then they beat Michigan. Oregon got arguably protected, having to really not play anyone great. Again, expecting Michigan to be better than they were. Yes, you can expect some fall off there. Same thing with Washington. You can expect some fall off there, but to go 7-5 and 6-6 for those teams respectively is huge fall off. You can make your argument of, well, the SEC protected Texas carries no weight. Don't lose to fucking Vanderbilt. Don't lose to fucking Oklahoma by 3 touchdowns. I know, it's fucking mind-blowing. Same thing with Ole Miss. Don't lose to fucking Kentucky. Don't lose to 4-win, 1 SEC, 1 win in conference, Kentucky. It's mind-blowing, I know. Who would have fucking thought of that? But at some point, the committee has to punish you for losing 25% of your games. There's only 12 regular season games. You lose 3 of them. That's a quarter of your games. That's some simple math right there. I don't even know what else to say. Alabama fans are sitting there. Same thing with some Ole Miss fans sitting there. Well, we just need to make all of our out of conference games, our non-conference games, cupcakes. They already fucking were. Alabama played 4 non-conference games. 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, were against FBS opponents. Those 3 FBS opponents had a combined record of 19-17, carried by fucking Western Kentucky, who went 8-4. You have 6-6 USF, and then 5-7 Wisconsin. When was the last time Western Kentucky ever went 8-4? First off, I could go to ESPN right now. Let's see. Is that the CUSA? It is. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 8-4 regular season. Schedule. 2023. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They went 7-5 in 2023. 2022. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, they did win 8 in 2022. Okay. '21. 1. Oh my. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I just look stupid here because okay, they've won 8 games out of 3 of the last 4 seasons. But when you're out of conference, the point still stands. When you're out of conference, is being carried by Western fucking Kentucky, that's not a good out of conference. I didn't even look to see who Who did Ole Miss play out of conference? I didn't even look because it's fucking irrelevant. Oh, Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern. Let's see, Middle Tennessee. 3-9, so 3 wins. Wake Forest. 7 wins because they went 4-8. Georgia Southern, I believe, had 3, so 11 total wins. Oh no, Georgia Southern went 8-4. So, right there, you have two non-con schedules. 7. $15. Let's see, 4. 15-21. 4. 12. Ole Miss is non-con, 15-21 for FBS opponents. Like, it wasn't your non-conference games that kept you out. It was losing, in Alabama's case, losing to fucking Vanderbilt, who lost to Georgia State. And Ole Miss losing to Kentucky, 4-win Kentucky. Alabama also got blown out by Oklahoma, but take one of those 2 losses out for Alabama, they're in. They're in over SMU. And they should be. They should have been. If they lose 2 games, yes, they deserve to be in over SMU. Because again, the ACC is terrible. The ACC is strictly worse than the SEC, but you should not be able to get in when there is as many 2-loss teams as there were. 1-loss teams as well. Tennessee, you have 2-loss Texas, who played in their conference championship. Only 2 losses came to Georgia. 2-loss Penn State, who played in their conference championship, lost to Ohio State, lost to Oregon. You have 2-loss Ohio State, one of their losses coming to Oregon. Then they do have they have the bad loss to Michigan. Then you have Tennessee, 2 losses. Georgia, who won the SEC, and a bad loss to Arkansas. When you have that many 2-loss teams right there, 1, 2, 3, 4 right there alone, you don't deserve to be to lose a quarter of your games and be in over another 2-loss team. Especially when SMU's 2 losses, if you look at SMU's 2 losses, they came to BYU by 3. BYU finished ranked 17th at 10-2, missing out on Big 12 championship because the Big 12 was super competitive, super fun, better than the ACC. And their other loss coming to Clemson in the conference championship. So you win one of those 2 of either Vanderbilt or Oklahoma. One of those 2. You have 3 losses. One of those gets eliminated. You're in over SMU. Same thing with Ole Miss. You have 3 losses. LSU. Who was their third? LSU, Kentucky, not Georgia. Christ, who was their third loss? Oh yeah, Florida. Forgot about that. Because Jackson Dart threw like 3 or 4 picks. Get rid of that Kentucky loss because 7-5 Ohio State got in after losing to 7-5 Michigan. So you could keep that Florida loss. Get rid of that Kentucky loss. You're in. These SEC shills are seeming to forget. Like, you have Lane Kiffin, who's, I made a video on it, going off complaining about how the system's broken when 365 days ago, under the old system, if he was complaining about not being in with a 2 or 3 loss team, he would have been laughed out of every room in the fucking country except for those in Mississippi. 49 out of 50 states, they would have laughed him out of the fucking room. Mississippi being the only state where they would have been like, huh, yeah, you're right. This new system is what kept him in and kept him being relevant. Same thing with Alabama. 365 days ago, if they had a 2 or 3 loss team, had this 3 loss team under the old system, if we were still under the old 4-team system, and Alabama, anyone politicking for Alabama to be in with 3 losses, they would have been laughed out of the goddamn room. Miami's the only team out of the first 3 out of Alabama, Miami, and Mississippi that has an argument, but Miami had 2 bad losses. Miami didn't have, I mean, that loss to Syracuse is pretty hard to explain. They struggled with Cal, they struggled with a bad Virginia Tech team who lost to Vanderbilt week 1 of the season, and they then lose to Georgia Tech. And okay, that Georgia Tech loss doesn't look as bad, but it circles around to what we said at the top. You can't punish SMU for playing in their conference championship and put Miami, who couldn't make it, who they were in a win and get in situation, and they lost. So you can't punish SMU. That's my thoughts. That's about as concise 37 minutes as I can make them. It'll be fun. We're gonna talk about this a lot. I have a feeling over the next few weeks. If I was an Oregon fan, I would be very upset with how the bracket actually works, and how you have to play as the number 1 seed to make it to the national championship. You either have to play Ohio State or Alabama, who are phenomenal teams. Then you most likely have to play Texas. And then Georgia. You got kind of the shit end of the bracket. Being the number 1 team, the only undefeated team in the country. We'll talk about that probably after the playoff is done in January. So we'll save that for a month and change down the road. But it's gonna be fun. I'm really excited to see how this works out. And we have a lot of good games here in this bracket. The only one that might suck is Texas Clemson. Because I even think Texas Arizona State or Clemson Arizona State, I think it's gonna be Texas. That'll be fun. Whoever wins Indiana Georgia or Indiana Notre Dame should be pretty fun against Georgia. Whoever comes out against SMU Boise or SMU Penn State, it's gonna be fun. And obviously the winner of Ohio State Texas again, or Ohio State Tennessee against Oregon, is going to be a very fun game. We have so many fun games to look at, other than maybe Texas Clemson. So it's gonna be great.